Okay, we are officially live. Welcome to our live today. We try to do these at least quarterly. Um, we will jump in here in a second. I know we'll have some people joining us live here. I'm just getting us settled in, doing some mic checks, all the things. Today we are going to be hearing from myself, Brandon Neely, Christy Duncan, Mark Willis, and Ben Berry in no particular order. And we're going to be covering this topic of the retiring without risk and a 3-part safe money plan. A little bit of what we're going to go over today. 3 things. We're going to talk about 7 overlooked assumptions when getting your retirement number. We're talking about 3 key parts of your portfolio, and then 3 crucial elements for your retirement income. I'll probably go over that again as people are joining live here. So I'll go back to the beginning. How y'all doing today? I got 2 thumbs up from Ben.
I'm good. Can you hear me? And do we have Mark there? Do we see Mark?
I'm hiding in the background. I don't know if you can hear me.
Here, I'll turn off my share screen for a second. That way we can see us all.
Oh, there we go.
Faces,
I was like,
nice. Hey there.
I was wondering where Mark was. I was like, I saw him. Yeah, so this is fun. We love doing these kind of things because as people come into our world, they think banking yourself. I've never heard of it. Are you the only person that does this in the world? And oftentimes we're like, no, there's other people. Well, why we wanted to create this kind of environment is to be able to say, yeah, actually there's other people and we hang out with them. And we do live videos and all of that. So as you can see, for me, you have Amanda. I don't know what, right, left, whatever. We are like literally joined at the hip, pretty much, kind of married. And then Christy, then we have Ben and Mark as well. So thank you guys for being a part of this group. And I'm excited for what we're going to do today. And if you guys are here, put in the comments. We want to hear from you. We want you guys to ask questions. You have a bunch of banking yourself professionals right here who know not just about banking yourself, but the financial layouts. And so we'd love to help any way we can. So comment.
Okay. I'm going to, looks like we've got a bunch of people joining live here. I'm about to like officially kick us off. Anything else anyone else want to add before we jump in?
Just that this impacts every single person watching this and the hundreds of millions more that aren't yet. So share this with a friend. If it's important to you, it's very likely important to the people that you care about the most. So let's be their hero today. All it takes is hitting the share button and give it to 1 or 100 other people that you know. Because if you could drive from your house to grandma's house without taking unnecessary risks, why would you? If you're not 18 years old and love the thrill of jumping off the trampoline and through the intertube in the backyard pool, if that's not your idea of like a normal way to get to grandma's house, if you'd rather just drive safely and get there safely, then why not do the same with something like your money? So that's my big request, is that don't just keep this a secret. Pass this on to someone who needs to hear about this today.
Yeah, great. That's a great reminder, Mark. Yeah, not too late or too early to share the share button or to use the share button. Invite them to join us live, or if you're watching the recording, thanks for being here. You can share the recording too. That's perfect. Okay, I'm gonna go back to sharing my screen here and make sure we get the right thing. Okay.
And there we go. Now Mark is gone. I guess, Mark, you'll just be
I think it only shows 4 people on the side.
That's okay.
Mark will be like God in heaven.
Can you hear me, or is it just I'm off the page completely? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can definitely hear you.
Oh, okay. All right. So I'll just be making snide comments from the back of the class here.
Perfect. We're a big group. Okay, so basically what we're going to talk about is, what if your retirement number is wrong? We asked you, if you saw the promo for this, to come with a retirement number, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. I'd love to know if you have a number in mind, whether it's a static number, like an X dollar amount, or whether it's like a formula, like X times my income. Let us know that in the chat. A lot of the retirement focus is to, accumulating that number, and it stops at age 65, as if that's the finish line. But as lots of people I know that are over 65 have told me, that is not the finish line. It's actually a starting line for just a whole new phase of life. And if we don't know what we don't know, we make lots of assumptions that can seriously change how we live those last few decades, several decades of our lives. So come with that number, put it in the chat if you feel comfortable sharing. If you don't want to share, at least have it in mind. How do you think about, what is my retirement number, or if you want to call it your financial freedom number? Have that in mind. And then we're going to go through the 7 overlooked assumptions to when getting your retirement number that you might want to add to or change about that number that you have in mind before we get going here. We'll have 3 parts of how you build that number. So after you get those assumptions in, what are the 3 parts, not just one part, but at least 3, the key parts. There could be more parts, but these are the 3 essential ones we believe. And then 3 crucial elements for the part that's going to give you income. Not all of it's for income, but the part that is going to give you income, 3 elements that you want for that income. So before we move forward, that's what we're going to discuss today. But we're going to talk about the problem a little bit. I see a couple 2.4 million, 17 coming in here in the chat. How about you guys joining us? Have you heard other people describe their freedom number or their retirement number?
Yeah, I actually wrote those numbers because I've heard people say, well, it's 2.4 when I get to that, or other people saying a lower number. Yours is a little different, so that's why I just put 17. And so that's where I hear a lot of people saying, when I get to this thing, then I'll be good. And so that freedom number, people talk about this all the time in the financial world, quote unquote freedom, fire movement, or whatever we call it.
Yeah. What other ways have you all heard about people talk about their freedom number or their retirement number?
A lot of times my clients like to speak about it in a monthly term. If I have this much per month, I'm good. They're comfortable with that certain number. A lot of times I speak with clients that they haven't thought much past that, or, that might be the first time they're even, talking to me about it. That's the first time they've even thought about that number. So.
Yeah, that's so true. I think, hope my voice isn't too echoey in here, but I think people say, well, if I'm making what I'm making now, maybe even less, because I won't have my mortgage to pay off, I think I'll be fine. So their freedom number is like, if I can just basically maintain what I've got now, in the future, I'll be okay.
Yeah. How about you, Mark? Anything you'd add?
I think the biggest piece is just, what does that number do for you? What does it help you accomplish? So what if you've got 1 million or 10 million, unless you know what it's going to actually convert into in terms of the lifestyle you want to live, which brings us to a lot of other interesting questions, like, well, where should our money go so it does what we want it to do for us? And another important question is, if you could reach your goal without having to work quite as hard, would that be acceptable to you? If I could use a chainsaw to cut down the tree rather than a spoon, would I prefer the chainsaw versus the spoon if it was going to lead to the same results of a chopped down tree? Sometimes we chase after a big goal, like a big fun number, freedom number, without really saying, well, what's the ultimate outcome?
Yeah. Yeah, what is $100 million worth if we're unhappy or if we're stressed
Right.
or struggling?
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Or let's say we have 100 million, but it's in stuff that can't convert to spendable cash. Like, let's say it's all tied up in Bitcoin that we never plan to sell.
Hmm.
It's not exactly a valuable asset to us if we never plan to benefit from it, whatever. Um, so you're right. There's the whole like esoteric side of finance, which is, you're really not benefited when you have, $100 million and no one loves you. But on the other side of things, if your money is in something that's totally illiquid, does it really accomplish what you're trying to accomplish?
Yeah. Going back to Christy, I think of what she shared as people in real estate. They often get that monthly passive income, and they think, okay, that's my freedom number. But then they forget about all the T's of real estate that they still have to deal with, and they might not be locked up in Bitcoin, but their cash flow is locked up in this place where they actually have to keep working, and they're trapped by the real estate that they have. That's just another example. Okay, so I really want, I see there's people watching us, quite a bit of you. I really want you to participate in the chat. Let us know if you're ready to move forward. Just a quick yes or a why. We want to know that you're here, that you're actively engaged. You're not just, listen to this in the background. We would love to know that you're here. Say yes, say watching, give me a why. It could be too that the chat is disabled or something. Hopefully not. We'll keep going. Oh my goodness. Okay, I got some yeses. Here we go. So we kind of highlighted this problem already, that most advisors, most planning focuses to age 65, when what happens after 65 or 62 or 70 or 55 or whatever age you want to put in that number, retirement. And there's a lot that can be in there. It can also look like a lot of different things for a lot of different people. So like we shared, we're going to talk about the 7 assumptions that are often overlooked, regardless of what number you'd put in there or how you define the word retirement. Even if you don't ever plan to retire, statistics show that about half of people who are retired are forced into retirement either by their inability to work, they got laid off, their own health, something like that, or the health of a loved one that they choose not to work to care for someone else. So when you don't plan to retire, you could be forced to. And in fact, we see that happen a lot. So come into this conversation with that in mind, and we'll start going through the overlooked assumptions. I'll put these up here one by one, give some space for each person to talk about them a little bit, and we'll see where we go from there. So the first overlooked assumption in a lot of people's retirement planning and freedom number is a big one: inflation. Who wants to say a couple words about inflation here?
I think that's something that, well, we're all experiencing right now, and we didn't think we were going to be experiencing 3 or 4 years ago. And it was one of those words that it's not going to happen, and now it is. And so that is becoming very aware to us of inflation. I think, we didn't really think it was a big deal as gas prices went up, but now it's everything going up. So that's a huge assumption. 2.4 million doesn't last if bread costs 2.4 million.
It's the worst, most insidious tax because no politician has to vote for it, so they love it, and it hurts the poor the worst. So it's the worst kind of regressive tax I can imagine. And even though inflation, officially anyway, has cooled on a broad basis, there's still a lot of inflation out there. What I've noticed is we didn't go back to the pre-inflation levels. We didn't have deflation. We just are slowing the rate of our continual erosion of the value of our dollar. And I don't imagine anyone is going to have the stomach to have we had deflation after the Civil War. and right up through about 1910, 1920, or they call it the Gilded Age for that reason, and for other reasons. And that was maybe the largest increase in the standard of living for Americans and really the world that I think we've ever seen as a human race. That section of time between the Civil War and like let's say the First World War, that was a period of lowering prices, which would be seen as sort of like the disaster to end all disasters, to have lowering prices. God forbid that we have lowering prices. And yet it was considered also the golden age, or the Gilded Age. So I'd be curious, like, I want to know, why is it so wrong to have level prices, or even better, lowering prices? We sure have it with our computers. We sure have it with our washing machines, why not with everything else too?
Yeah, that's a great point. Just highlighting on the fact that, yeah, it's like a hidden tax. They call it like the silent wealth killer. You don't realize, you don't see it coming, and slowly, yeah, your dollar is worth less and less each year.
Yeah, so here's an example too. So just to illustrate, like if there was a consistent 4% inflation rate, so an individual that required $50,000 per year today would need the equivalent of $162,170 in 30 years to maintain that same standard of living. That's huge. That is a huge gap, just because of that 4% inflation over time.
Yeah. And such a great point, everybody. And the thing we forget about inflation is that a 2% inflation today is much less than a 2% inflation after many years of 2%, because that's a compounding effect that that works against us. So we have to be very cautious about that. Let's go ahead to the next one. We might come back and talk more about inflation. If you've got questions, thoughts about it for the audience, please share that in the chat too. The next one is fees. Now, this is one of the most misunderstood part. Nobody ever thinks they're paying fees. They have a hard time finding their fees. What would we reveal, kind of pulling back the curtain about the fees and how they wreck someone's financial freedom number?
So since I was just throwing out some numbers, I'm going to throw out a few more numbers, Amanda.
Yay!
And this comes from the Department of Labor. Okay. So the Department of Labor themselves say that fees can really have a dramatic effect. Even a mere 1% difference in fees and expenses could reduce someone's account balance by 28% over a 35-year period, which is that is so huge. You're almost taking a third of the chunk of your retirement just in fees. In fact, I did find a nice little thing that people can look up online. You can just Google 10 major retirement costs overlooked. What's the full thing? This is through the U.S. Department of Labor. It's very easy to find out there. I think it's they're talking about, this particular thing I'm talking about is about 401k fees. So right there on the Department of Labor, there's telling you, hey, you need to look out. Most people, like you're saying, most people don't even think about the dramatic impact of fees. So they're saying, you need to understand this. Before you get into that 401k, you need to understand the dramatic impact of these fees. So,
yeah. And those are coming out whether you gain or whether you lose each year.
Yeah.
So true, Christy. That's a big part there. Like, does it make anyone else angry that the only person with the guarantee in your 401k is the one taking a fee off of your back? And does it make you mad that the only person taking the risk is the one who doesn't have that guarantee, i.e. you in this case? To me, that makes me angry. And it destroys compounding, and it sure incentivizes the investment guru or advisor to continuously keep you in something that may or may not be in your best interest.
Yeah. Okay, I think we could probably talk about fees more, but I'm going to keep us moving here because we've got 7 of these to cover and then get better and better, juicier and juicier as we go. One maybe thing that I will add here, you know how like people get really mad about the like Ticketmaster fees that they see, or when they, book, something online, for travel, and then they see all the fees that are added on at the end. Those are called junk fees. And we finally see them on the receipt. If there's any lawmakers watching, can we please have the fees of investment accounts and 401ks and those kind of things disclosed more so upfront, not hidden in the fine print and on a receipt, or much more clear to see? That would be amazing. Okay, thank you. Moving along. Sequence of returns. Now, I know some retirement PhD experts call this the biggest risk that retirees face. Who wants to tackle this one?
I mean, I might as well go with some of it. Like, I mean, if it goes down, money we go in a negative, that's going to affect our future retirement, right? And so a lot of times people will claim averages, and that, Mark, you probably could talk hours and hours on the sequence of returns. Your podcast is not your average financial, but if you have that low year, it will affect things, right? And depending on when that sequence or down year happens, will impact you greatly. But then we're just told, don't worry about it. It's okay. Just suck it up. Work for 10 more years and you'll be fine. The problem is if you're 65 and you can't work, or, stroke, something that happened, that sequence of returns is a problem for you.
Great. Yeah, the sequence of returns means you can have an 8% average rate of return and actually lose money because of the sequence of those returns. And I'm sure you could talk to any of us and we could show you that. Okay, yeah. Here's a big one.
I did want to say real quick, I was in the at the sports club, and somebody who was an investor, and they were like arguing over that and saying how he's great, he times the market, he grows everything, and I was like, he doesn't understand sequence of returns, or he's like young enough that he doesn't matter to him yet. Mm-hmm. And so that's a assumption that he was definitely facing, but I didn't want to argue.
Yeah,
probably good not to argue at the sports club.
Right. One thing I'll add is I hear you guys say this all the time. If you lose 25%, in a down market, you need 33% just to break even, just to get back to your starting point and back to what you had initially. So that blows my mind.
And your average return would be positive, even though you're technically at just break even. Yeah, for sure. Okay, let's go to the next one. Long-term care. Now, this is maybe one that people don't want to plan for. They hope they never have to deal with. But it can be a huge expense that then decreases the full amount that you have for retirement, or could make you go into debt, or something like that. What are we talking about here?
Well, this is the part of the retirement plan that no one talks about because no one expects it'll be them. But one in, 60% of retirees will have one member of the household, so husband or wife, will need 3 years in a nursing home facility. That's according to the U.S. Census Bureau. And if you total up the cost on average between Medicare, that's stuff that's not covered by Medicare, and then long-term care, it's approaching $500,000. So please, guys, understand that's the money above what you need to just buy groceries and gas and grandkid presents throughout your normal retirement time. So you might think of retirement as sort of a bell curve. You have kind of the go-go years where you're spending a lot of money and traveling. You slow things down as you're eating at Shoney's and Denny's and the Golden Trough and all that. And then the last 2 to 3 years of your life, the costs skyrocket again, as you enter into assisted living. Now, a lot of folks jokingly wave that off and say, well, they'll just take me out behind the shed and call it a day, or put me on the ice block and send me off to sea. I have not seen that legally works out well for your next of kin legally yet, at least in this country. And I don't know if you're given that choice, if you'd want that either. So we need a plan for that. Otherwise, your kids or grandkids are going to have that terrible taste in their mouth of the last year, 2 or 3 of your life, where you ruin their chances at a successful retirement if you don't take care of this problem right now while you're thinking about it and while you're mentally able to do something about it. So long-term care is huge. That's right. Yeah. And our comments here say it's not just a healthcare issue, it's a financial legacy issue. Great point.
And being a caretaker ourselves of somebody, seeing how that impacts us in some regards, not being selfish, but there is a cost to us as the provider. And then you said, how much is it that average is needed for?
With uncovered Medicare and long-term care, it approaches $500,000.
And how much?
That's money
I
that
just wonder
nobody
how
has
much
saved.
people actually have saved for their own future, a part of long-term care. That's a problem to me. I was like, most people don't even have $250,000.
Yeah, that's more than people have in retirement for all of retirement, not just allocated for the last 3 years of it.
Yep.
Yeah. One question I ask everyone, that I talk to is, is there anyone whose, care you may be responsible for in the future, or who's, you might be financially responsible for? And, a lot of times the people who are most concerned and most aware of long-term care are people who have had a parent, that's gone through it. They've seen it firsthand, what it does and how it can really, drain that legacy, drain, what's left, and also just, put a burden on the family, in general. So,
yeah. And then they're much more open to preparing for it and including it in their number if they've seen someone go through it before. Let's not wait till we have to go through that to make a plan and have some ideas. We're going to get into some ideas as we go here of how you could cover that, maybe at no out-of-pocket cost. We'll think about that. This one, I know this next one, Mark is going to have a lot to say about this based on a recent episode on his podcast. And I feel like I hear it regularly on the Not Your Average Financial podcast. True diversification. Diversification is one of those words people think they know what it means, but they often think they know what it means when they don't really. Mark, do you want to tackle this one first, and then we'll add on?
Well, it's just like the Princess Bride when Inigo Montoya says, "You keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means." This is so true. Many people say, "Mark, I want diversification." Why do they say that? It's because they've been told to say that. And yes, it's fine and fair to be diversified, especially if we're talking about all of your eggs being in one basket. If you're concerned about it possibly being overly exposed to one categorical risk, like an equity downturn or something like that. But just because you've put your eggs in 12 baskets doesn't mean it's safe if all those baskets are on the same truck and that truck happens to be headed towards a cliff. So the important thing to remember is, what is the categories of risk that we're solving for with diversification? Warren Buffett says diversification is simply insurance against ignorance. And who was it who said, is it Andrew Carnegie who said, rather than diversifying into 12 baskets, put all your money in one basket and then watch that basket. And what did he mean by that? He just meant understand and protect the assets that you have. Just because you dumped money into 15 different index funds, you might be investing in the same stock 15 different times, which has nothing valuable for you, and it just adds to the fees of your portfolio. Again, index funds buy stocks. And if you have 15 different index funds, you might have bought Microsoft in 15 different buckets. And that didn't do anything for your protection against market risk or Microsoft's downturn or whatever. So there's a whole lot more there, but I better hush and pass the ball to somebody else. Diversification,
so good,
true diversification, Amanda. What did you mean by true diversification?
Well, that people make an assumption. They know what that means. And we don't want to assume. We want to actually diversify, right?
How do you spell assume? I forget. How do you spell that? Yes, we know.
Well,
okay.
I was
Well, I
going to
see
say,
we're about halfway and we have a lot to cover. So keep it quick, Brandon. Let's get the last two in.
just having the true diversification is doing stuff in real estate or also in maybe the stock market and in other things. That is not just saying it's in one thing, but different things. That's true diversification, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Amanda,
And
someone had a question in the chat. I'm sorry. You might check out. Someone asked this question. Have any of you ever experienced any of these assumptions? So maybe we have 30 seconds to cover that.
Yeah. If you've experienced any of the assumptions as we're going, share those in the chat. I think that was maybe one of us putting that in there to ask the audience.
Cool.
I love it. And if you're a business owner, diversification can often mean something different than than it does for like a non-business owner. You might have diverse income streams, that kind of thing. But of course, if you're counting on the sale of your business as the way to reach your number, what do they say? One is the most dangerous number, right? Having multiple options for how you sell that business or those kind of things can also be how you diversify. Okay, longevity. People, actually, the biggest comment I get from people when I ask them, like, how long do we want to be planning for, is they often like hope they don't live too long because they don't want to deal with their body declining and their mental capacity declining. But yet we're living longer and longer. How do we make sure that we're living well in those older years?
Well, I think some of this is that longevity is people, if we're living well and we're taking care of our bodies, we'll probably live a little longer. So then that affects the long-term care. If we're eating Twinkies all day, every day, then our longevity might be less, but that's not a good way to live either. So taking care of ourselves is great. We should be doing that to have our best life. And if we are doing well, we should want to keep that. But then I don't want to get penalized because I took care of myself.
I think this is a super important thing to consider for people right now, because if we are living longer, but look at the state of our health in this country, it's actually in many senses it's declining. We've got a terrible diet. It's called, we even have a word for it, standard American diet. It's called the SAD diet, right? So if we're living longer with poor quality of health, what does that also mean for our costs, our expenses in retirement? Chances are we're going to be spending more and more and more on healthcare. So when people fail to plan for that, we're very much putting ourselves in a bind. Or as advisors, if we're not making people aware of this fact, Jimmy Carter just lived to 100 years old, right? It's like the number of people living to 100 is going to quadruple by like 2054, I think. So this is something that we absolutely have to take into account. And if we're young enough, if we're at the stage where we can do something about it, we got to make some, not just financial shifts, but some fundamental lifestyle shifts as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of times just having that security, like a lot of people in America, along the diet, like a lot of people aren't saving, for the future. Like I think that number was really low. I don't have that exact number, but I know that the percentage of Americans that are putting away, 10% or whatever for their future it's gone down a great deal, over the past, 100 years or so. So
yeah. Yeah. And I think what you guys are referring to a little bit is like when we assume we're going to live, this many years in retirement, we come up with rules like the 4% rule, that if you have 25 times your income, you can take 4% per year and you won't run out of money. But yet that has a 50-50 chance of running out of money within those 25 years. And what if you live 35, right? And as women, this is an even bigger issue for us because we do typically live longer. I have this, when I was a little girl, a woman who was in her 90s that I looked up to, was radiant, had so much joy. When I, plan for my future, I want to be her. I'm not planning to be, the sickly woman who, can barely walk or, something like that. I'm planning to be her, and I'm going to live differently and actually maybe enjoy life more because I'm planning for that longevity. Okay, last one here.
I just wanted to add
Taxes.
real
Go ahead,
quick
Brandon. Yeah, and then talk
on
about
some of
taxes.
this is when we think about the 4% rule or any of these kind of rules or standards ways of thinking, the I, the thing that people forget is some of that stuff has been disproven. And if we are understanding and living in the 80s of 4% rule and it's not that anymore, but we're still living as if that's the reality, that's a problem. So with sequence of returns, the long-term care, like all of these things are changing our landscape. We have to change ourselves and understand what are the foundational things that we can do different. Same with taxes. What was great, you know, prior to 2020, now it's changing, and we're like, okay, now taxes go up or down, or who knows. I don't like any of these things. Of I want to be able to have a good foundation regardless.
Great. And so, yeah, if we're not accounting for taxes, right, we ignore those, we're not planning for them, or the changes that those could have, that can have a big impact. So we've been having people come in and out of the conversation so far. To recap where we're at, we're talking about your financial freedom number or your retirement number, and it needs to have all of these things looked into, planned for. If inflation is X, how does that impact my number? If the sequence of returns is Y, how does that impact my number? If I do need long-term care, am I prepared for it, right? You can kind of go through those, update your number, some of the information that we've shared here. This next part, I'm going to go through quickly and then ask y'all's comments on. So, because now we're getting to the rice and beans of the conversation, which is my vegan version of the meat of the conversation, the impossible of the conversation, impossible meat, that is, not impossible for all of you.
So
And
not
this
beans
is
and rice, but rice and beans. Okay.
correct. Okay. This is what we call the all-weather portfolio that helps with all 7 of those things that we just talked about. Make sure that you're ready for them. And it has 3 pieces to it, key pieces. You might have more pieces, but what it all breaks down kind of fits into these baskets or buckets. The first one is the certainty portion. How much of your income do you want coming in predictably, just like your current paycheck? And you can build that piece of your portfolio and make sure that is there for you and it's predictable, maybe has some guarantees behind it, and it's going to give you lots of certainty. You know you're getting paid next month, just like you did when you were employed, right? The second part is the legacy or wealth accumulation portion. This may be what you leave to the next generation, but it could also be the wealth that you depend on for when you need to have a big thing. And but also, like, you could maybe wait for a recovery because you've got that income here. If something happens, you're able to wait a couple years, right? If the market's down, you can wait for it to recover before you do X, Y, or Z. Or your heirs could wait those couple years. And then the third one is money that you could lose, just money that you can afford to lose in its entirety. You don't care if your next generation gets it or if you even have to use it. You can have all 3 of these parts of your portfolio. And then we can talk about what part of your money do you want in each one and how do you build this? Do you guys want to tackle that part of it? What comments do you have about this part?
About the third part specifically?
Or all 3, like,
yeah.
And I kind of give the basic overview.
I remember when I was a kid, I would wrestle in the snow with my brother because my mom would kick us out, and she would tell us to get in like summer clothes and just wrestle in the snow. And the idea was to get so cold and numb that we would forget how hot it would get in the summertime. And it's always reminded me when I think about the all-weather portfolio, most of us forget what it's like to go through a major market downturn when everything feels like the world is ending. We have little glimpses of that, but we've been through such a long secular bear market bull market, that many people have only ever experienced the warm months of summertime. And we all must have these 3 components to protect you in all seasons.
That's a great analogy. I'm gonna use that one. And also, like, doing the cold ice bath in the middle of summer.
That's right.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
As I think about talking to clients, a lot of times they focused on one, and as we talk with them, maybe we're leaning from a different vantage point, but you need all three. And sometimes you might be moving in a different direction at age 65 versus 35.
Okay.
One quick thought here is that sometimes we just people conflate all three of these when they think about retirement. They think saving and investing are the same thing.
Great point.
You know, when obviously when you just look at this, you're like, oh, they're not. Saving is what you can't really afford to lose. That's the certainty part. Investing, you know, maybe that's 2 and 3 kind of. You can afford to lose that, you know. So we got to kind of delineate those two things, and how we do that and think about it is going to, I think you're going to get there, Amanda, and take us there. It makes a huge difference if we can actually delineate these things and plan accordingly.
Yeah. And I'll speak quickly to the people who have, instead of a big number that they're drawing down, they've built an income, a passive income. You want to think of that income, how much of that do you want to be predictable, have guarantees behind it, which dividends from a stock portfolio or rents from a rental property, they have some predictability, but they're not 100% predictable. So you have to account for that. And then how much of that income do you want to, you know, you don't have to take it if you don't need it. It can stay there, wait for recovery, or how much you willing to be like, I could live on way less, and make those kind of sacrifices if you have that cash flow constraint happen as well.
I've got some numbers on that if we end up having time for it, Amanda, but bookmark that.
Let's
keep moving.
Perfect.
Let's move faster, because we have a lot, and people are like, how do I solve this?
Yeah. So why all three? This is an acronym. I'm a huge fan of acronyms. Access, risk return awareness, and tax advantages. Having all three parts of this portfolio give you access to some, help you make sure that you're balancing risk and return, and that you're balancing the tax advantages here. For access, we've got accessible anytime without penalty, values not tied up in illiquid assets, there's no timing risk on bear markets. And what we found is that for each year of buffer income that you have available, where you're like, I don't have to sell something when it's low, I've got this buffer income. Each year of buffer income, you can actually take 10% more income than if you don't have that buffer income. You don't have the, you know, number one in that 3 pieces of the portfolio. And for planning for 30 years, pretty cool. I'll go through these quickly, and then I'm going to stop screen share, and we'll kind of go through. I know Mark's going to switch screen share. Now we got risk return awareness. There's no volatility, or there could be some potential for decline. How are you going to avoid when it goes down, having to adjust your plan, you know, cut expenses, start, you know, eating cat food, whatever it might be, and have that certainty baked in instead. I love this. Our friend Les Himmel calls mutual funds Wall Street's trash can. They're going to have a different level of risk and return awareness that if you're using mutual funds that you'd want to dig into. And this is where, in technical terms, something called the Sharpe ratio. When you have the same return but less risk, you have a better Sharpe ratio, and it's a risk adjusted return is what that ratio is giving you. And only insurance-based products, the company has indemnified you of the risk, and so then you're insulated from that volatility, and they you have a better if you have the same return but less risk, you actually have a better Sharpe ratio, which in most portfolio speak would say, okay, that's better. And then finally, for tax advantages, if you can have income that's tax-free, your growth tax-free, where you get what you put in first out first, and Roth like a treatment, all those kind of things can really change how you're able to have access, and the risk returns and the tax advantages all build that first predictable layer of your portfolio. And no surprise here, we're banking yourself professionals. For those 3 things, access, risk return awareness, and tax advantages, only whole life diversifies in all 3 ways. Okay, I just summarized that really quickly. I'm going to start my screen share. What would you all add to that? fill in. And Mark, get ready for your screen share too. We got about 15 minutes left.
Okay, so we really like the acronym around here, and you did a great job on that, Amanda. Thank you. I think once again, my dad taught me that different golf clubs are useful on different parts of the course, and if you try to use your putter in the sand, you're not going to get out of the sand. Okay, and I didn't understand that as a kid. I would play with my toys in ways that broke the toys. I mean, and there's some part to being creative, but when and Brandon, you brought it up that we confuse these different parts of our portfolio. We take one asset like stocks or investments and then apply it to other parts that are incorrect. They simply will break your financial life. So this is more than just being stuck in a sand trap. You're going to be dealing with much more dangerous outcomes when you apply the wrong part of your portfolio to, the safe or core or central. What was the first one called, Amanda? The no risk or the safe part of your portfolio?
Yeah, the predictable part.
Yep. So, what is your money doing for you when it's in that bucket? How does it act? When you pour water into the freezer, it's going to change its shape and it's going to act differently. And so what is it you want that money doing for you? That's the key question. Whether you decide to work with one of us or not, you ask yourself that question over and over again, and don't let anybody else tell you what your money should be doing for you. If you know that you need access, if you know that you need tax advantages, if you know that you need the predictability of something that does not go wildly swinging when you don't want it to, that's the key. So again, I kind of use the idea of when you're trying to chop down a tree, do you want a chainsaw or do you want a dull spoon? Both will eventually chop down the tree, but what is that? Abraham Lincoln would say, if you gave me 4 hours to chop down a tree, I'd spend the first 3 hours sharpening my axe or something like that. And it dawns on me that we make this so hard, and it really doesn't have to be so hard. Thank God. We can have a fairly simple financial life. We don't have to be experts at following the latest tweet or the latest stock pick or what the Fed sneezed on yesterday. I don't care about that. My financial life is solved when I've made a couple of smart choices. It's, again, not to mix metaphors, but it's like when you've got the right hinge on the door, it swings no matter how big that door is. Okay, so I've got a few examples here. Brandon and someone, Ben, you brought up the 4% rule in our chat. Did we explain what that is for our audience? Do we know what is the 4% rule? What is the 4% rule, Ben? And then I'll share my screen.
Basically, and how Brandon, thankfully you brought this up. It's an outdated kind of guideline for people, how much they can safely, right? They can hopefully safely take from their pile of money that they've accumulated for retirement, and they're told if you take 4%, every single year of that mountain of money that you've got, then that money will last for you through retirement.
Can I add something to that? This happened recently to me, as a client, 65, about to retire, and they were told, well, and they did well in accumulating, doing all the things, but she really wanted a roadmap, a plan. It just so happens that it's a family member that helped her build her plan and grow, and it was pretty big. But she's like, I need to have a plan, a roadmap to tell me, because he's like, don't worry about it, you'll be fine, you're good. But what you really needed was not just accumulation, but preservation and distribution as part of it. And so that was something that we talked about a lot. And the hard part is her emotions, and as much as she wanted to work with me, the value of relationship was more important, which I'm like, I don't know, it's a hard thing to think through, that there's a lot of psychology that goes into us. But in the end, preservation and distribution and using different tools for different things, whether it's annuities, life insurance, the stock market, real estate, doesn't matter. Does that get you to where you want to go?
So Brandon brought up three very important words: accumulation, preservation, distribution. Those three words are really a big deal. Those are three functions, right? In golf, you'd have loft, distance, and spin. Those are all important functions. And I love those verbs and those adjectives because it gets rid of the bias of nouns. I don't care if you call it a 401k or a 7OK or a not okay or a dry sponge. I don't care what you call my money as long as it has the right functionality to it. And those three phrases, I think Wall Street has done a great job with accumulation, but they have no plan for preservation or distribution. Here's what I mean and what Brandon brought up. So let's say you've saved or accumulated, let me say it that way, you've accumulated $1 million in your 401k or who cares, tax-free Roth IRA, doesn't matter. What is 4% of that? Well, that's $40,000 a year. And the best research says that gives us like a 50% chance of success over a 30-year period. 50% chance. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt and say you flip and flip the coin and it lands on heads, which is what you called. So let's say you're successful in your 50% chance. Do I want to get into a plane if I have a 50% chance of success? No, I don't. But let's presume, for sake of being kind to the Wall Street friends, that you do actually have enough to survive and you make it 30 years off of your $1 million. Your 401k can generate you 40 grand a year of income. How hard would it be to accumulate $1 million more today if you had to start right now? Not easy. You might could do it with your persistence and living on rice and beans. Sorry, Amanda, and then enjoying no dining out and hopefully getting great rates of return in the market. That's $1 million, guys, to generate 40 grand a year. Okay, and you're right, Brandon, there's taxes and other things, but let's set aside all of that for a minute. What if I could help you live like a millionaire on way less than $1 million? So what if we could do that? Well, we did this for a podcast, episode 150 of our podcast, Not Your Average Financial Podcast, shameless plug. It took us $620,000 to get $40,000 a year of guaranteed lifetime income. Guaranteed lifetime income. This is our worst case scenario. We have basically 620 grand in your 401k or IRA. Would that be any easier to set aside and grow $620,000? Well, it's not like falling off a log, but it's sure easier than $1 million saved, right? Can I get an amen on that?
Yeah.
Amen.
So at age 60, this guy throws in $620,000. 5 years later, he starts kicking out 40 grand a year guaranteed. Worst case scenario. Now, there's several other scenarios there. Like, if we decided that there was going to be some positive market performance, you might actually start to see $48,000 a year of income off of only $620,000 to have increasing income. We could start it off and still we're above 40 grand a year. And look at how the income performs over a long period of time. We're getting pay raises, in essence, throughout retirement years, helping keep up with that first I word. What was that first word you gave us, Amanda?
Inflation.
Inflation. Oh, yeah, that's right. And one last little fun fact. Even if you run out of money in your bucket, you never run out of income. Try doing that with a 401k or, typical Wall Street, shenanigans. So why do I share all this? I'm just sharing there are different clubs in your bag, Try stocks for some of the money that you can afford to lose, and then put money into a bucket that you absolutely know is going to be there if you cannot afford to lose it.
Yeah, we have this question that was placed in the chat by the Not Your Average Financial Podcast. I don't know if this came in from somewhere else or probably Julia.
Hi, thanks, Julia.
Is it too late to start a new retirement plan if someone is already in their 50s or 60s? I'm going to give them a scenario. Let's say somebody just went through a really hard time in their early 50s, major divorce, downward spiral. They're starting from scratch. They're at zero. Is it too late for them? What would you say?
So you have to start somewhere. I mean, you need to start now, or like, what do they say? The best time to plant a tree was 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago. And I hear this all the time. And if we just wait for a lottery to win that we never play, that's a bad decision. So talk or develop a plan. Maybe you're not going to Tahiti all the time, but that's better than eating beans and rice every day, unless you're Amanda.
Well, what would you like? What if they feel like I have to take more risk to make up for all the time I lost?
I
That's
hear that all the time.
yeah, I think that's a false thing, and we're told to do that because that's, you know, if you confuse, you lose. And I think a lot of people are confused, and they're just told, well, if I just risk more. The problem is, the more they risk, the more potential for loss. And if sequence of returns risks or something crazier happens, they just lost another 10 years because now they're 70, not 60, trying to retire.
And starting from scratch or a little above scratch.
Yeah, you got that what the heck effect. I'll say it that way. The what the heck effect is a psychological phrase that like, I guess when you're on a diet and you have one little bite of a brownie, you're like, ah, what the heck? And you just slam 3 gallons of ice cream and 5 brownies. And this is not a good idea. And it's a fallacy to say it doesn't matter or that calories don't count on Christmas Day or whatever. You have to remind yourself that even though you went through a terrible situation, a divorce that wrecked you financially, there's a book on my shelf back here. It says, "Always we begin again." And it's a call to the Benedictine way of life, that every single day you get to start fresh. And what are you going to do today to inch your way closer toward financial solvency? Even if you're starting on scorched earth, you can do it. It's better than not trying.
Yeah.
And what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing and expecting different results.
Investing in the market and hoping for the best. Oh, well, I'm sorry. That was another definition. Okay.
Yeah. So I want to speak to young people. If we looked and saw our parents doing that and seeing their results, we need to start a different paradigm, a different thing. And that's where I want to speak to younger people while we are here, is maybe we want to start now and say, could everything that we've learned be wrong or different or not apply?
Okay, so we've covered a lot of scenarios today. People that have millions saved or invested that we're trying to figure out how do we make sure that lasts for a long time. People starting from zero that maybe are building at 50 or maybe at 22. And you have your own story. Those of you listening in or watching us on YouTube, you have your own story. It's not going to be exactly like any of those. Well, the main thing we want you to know is that you don't have to do all of this alone. You don't have to figure out all 7 assumptions and build all 3 parts of your portfolio and make sure that you're able to have access, you're balancing risk or return, and you're accounting for the long-term taxes, not just the taxes this year. We're here to do that. We love talking about all of these things. We're not just trying to force people to buy the properly designed whole life insurance or a specific type of annuity. We're here to help you think it through as much as you want, right? Dig into it, play the what ifs or the what could be, right? Like instead of, worried about this, being like, well, what could happen if we did this, right? Instead of what if this happens and all that kind of scenario. So we would love to talk to you, help you do that. What I'm going to ask each person to do is drop your link where people could schedule with you on your calendar in the chat. And I know some people have been having some sound issues that we're hearing about in the chat here. What basically we're saying is, I'll say this again, whatever scenario you're in, we're here to help walk with you, not just sell your product, but help you bake in, what are those assumptions? How can you account for them? And how do you make an all-weather portfolio? So please reach out to us. I think we're all going to put in the chat our links, and actually Brandon, Christy, and me are all at the same link. So you can find all of us there, whatever link you see there. And then Ben and Mark, please share your links. And we'll be getting the replay out there too. Actually, the same link where you found this live, it'll process, go through the buffering and YouTube and all that kind of thing, and it'll be at the same place live, or the same link will work for that as well. And we've got the Not Your Average Financial Podcast for places to keep learning, keep growing, as well as the Wealth Wisdom Financial Podcast. Ben, you want to give us another amazing place where we can learn, keep growing?
Another amazing place.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be your podcast, it be something different.
Yeah, I guess you could connect with me on Facebook or Instagram, just kind of the regular social channels. Facebook or Instagram would be at the.ben.berry. So you can find me there. You can connect pretty much to all the various channels that I'm connected to. So
perfect, great. Yeah. Okay, and I think we're getting all the, okay, I got Mark's URL here, and I'll put that in there, and we'll see you all on the flip side. Any other concluding thoughts?
You guys just keep being the master of your own ship. We're here to serve, and if you like this, reach out to us. Tell us what you want us to talk about next. We want to do these regularly, and we love when people are commenting. So this is great for us, and hopefully for you. Like and subscribe and do all the things.
Okay, y'all take care.
That's
we'll
right. Thanks,
soon.
Amanda. Thanks,
Thanks,
everybody.
Amanda. Thanks, Brandon.